You don't get targeted because you're unlucky. You get targeted because every time you speak, move, and react, you advertise yourself as prey. You've been operating under a false model of how predatory behavior works. The model you inherited from your upbringing, your schooling, probably from people who needed you compliant, told you that manipulation is emotional, that people hurt others out of anger, insecurity, impulse, that exploitation is chaotic, that if you're a good person, you're mostly safe. That model is not just wrong, it is the reason you keep getting selected. Here is what behavioral science, Machiavellian doctrine, and every serious study of social dominance hierarchies confirms without exception. Predatory individuals do not operate on emotion, they operate on information. And you have been providing that information fluently, consistently, and completely without awareness. Every time you enter a room, open your mouth, or respond to pressure. This is called the selection protocol. Predators, whether they are manipulative partners, exploitative employers, social dominance, or institutional systems, do not choose targets randomly. They run an environmental scan, constantly, automatically. The same way a biological predator does not chase every animal in the field. It watches for specific postural, behavioral, and neurological signals that identify which animal is least likely to fight back, most likely to comply, and safest to consume. In human social environments, this scan happens within seconds of contact. Research in nonverbal communication, including the foundational work of Albert Machiavellian on behavioral leakage and Paul Ekman's studies on micro-expression detection, confirms that dominance and submission are communicated and received before a single word is processed. The predator's nervous system reads yours, not your words, not your intentions, your signals. This is not metaphor. This is neurobiology. What this means, strategically, is devastating. Your internal sense of confidence is irrelevant if your external signal architecture broadcasts submission. You can feel strong and still be catalogued as prey. You can have firm beliefs and still be targeted. Because the selection process does not read your interior, it reads your output. Machiavelli understood this in the 15th century when he wrote that men judge by the eye more than by the hand. The world, he observed, does not have the time or the inclination to examine what you truly are. It sees what you present, and it responds accordingly. The question is no longer whether you are being scanned. You are, always. The question is, what verdict are you currently broadcasting? Before you can eradicate the signals, you need to understand what is actually generating them. This is not a confidence problem. It is not a mindset problem. Those are the comfortable diagnoses, the ones that sell self-help books and keep you circling the same behavioral patterns for years without structural change. What you are dealing with is a neurological output problem, and it runs deeper than your conscious decisions. Here is the mechanism. Your nervous system operates on two primary threat response tracks. The first is the sympathetic system, fight or flight. You know this one. Heart rate elevation, adrenaline, tunnel vision. The second, less discussed but far more socially consequential, is the fawn response, a survival adaptation documented extensively in trauma psychology and social dominance research, in which the nervous system suppresses confrontation and generates appeasement behaviors to neutralize a perceived threat. Fawning is not weakness in the moral sense. Evolutionarily, it was intelligent. In environments where fighting back meant death, appeasing the dominant organism kept you alive. The problem is that your nervous system does not distinguish between a physical predator and a socially dominant human in a meeting room. It runs the same ancient software, and that software produces a very specific, very readable set of outputs. Psychologists call this limbic leakage. The emotional and threat response state of your limbic system, the primitive, pre-rational brain, bleeds into your physical behavior involuntarily. You do not decide to break eye contact first. Your threat response system triggers a gaze aversion reflex to signal non-aggression. You do not choose to over-explain your position. Your appeasement circuitry generates verbal justification to preempt anticipated punishment. You do not elect to fidget. Your nervous system bleeds excess threat response energy through repetitive physical displacement. These are not character flaws. They are biological transmissions, and every socially sophisticated predator, consciously or instinctively, has learned to read them. Research by psychologist David Matsumoto on dominance hierarchies and nonverbal behavior confirms that high dominance individuals demonstrate a consistent pattern. They occupy space, sustain gaze, tolerate silence, and offer no unnecessary behavioral justification. Low dominance individuals do the precise opposite and are treated accordingly by every system they enter. Robert Greene, synthesizing centuries of power observation in the 48 Laws of Power, identified the core principle with surgical clarity. The image you project determines the treatment you receive. Not your values, not your history. Your projected signal. This is the architecture you are currently running. And until you understand exactly what it is transmitting, you cannot change the output. There are hundreds of micro-behaviors that signal submission, but research across nonverbal communication, clinical psychology, and dominance hierarchy studies consistently converges on 4 primary broadcast signals. The ones predatory individuals detect first, weight most heavily, and use to make the initial targeting decision. These are not subtle. Once you see them, you cannot unsee them in others, and more uncomfortably, in yourself. Prey marker 4. Gaze submission. Breaking eye contact first is not politeness. It is a biological concession of dominance. In every primate hierarchy studied, including human corporate, social and intimate environments, the individual who breaks the gaze first is registering subordinate status. It is an ancient signal, pre-linguistic, that says, I acknowledge your dominance. I am not a threat. I will not contest you. Predators do not consciously think this. They feel it. The moment you look away first, something registers in their threat assessment system as a green light. You have just communicated that pressure works on you. Prey marker 2. Boundary over-explanation. When you say no, how many words does it take? If the answer is more than one sentence, you are not setting a boundary. You are negotiating with the predator for permission to have one. Over-explanation is a fawn response. It is the verbal equivalent of exposing your throat. It signals that you do not believe your boundary is legitimate without external validation. And it broadcasts that your position can be eroded with sufficient pressure. Machiavelli was precise on this. A prince who constantly justifies his decisions invites contestation of every decision. The moment you explain yourself to someone who did not earn that explanation, you have handed them leverage. Prey marker 3. Displacement. Fidgeting. Touching your face, adjusting clothing, tapping surfaces, shifting weight. These are not nervous habits. They are threat energy discharge behaviors. Your nervous system is flooded with unprocessed stress, and it bleeds outward through physical repetition. To a predator's instinctive threat scanner, this registers as, this individual is not in control of their own nervous system. If you cannot regulate yourself under mild social pressure, you will not resist sustained psychological pressure. You are neurologically announcing it. Prey marker 4. Silence intolerance. This is the most exploited signal of all. Silence in negotiation and power dynamics is a weapon. The individual who cannot tolerate it, who rushes to fill dead air with concessions, qualifications, or nervous commentary, hands that weapon to whoever is comfortable staying quiet. Sales professionals, interrogators, manipulative partners, and high dominance personalities all know the same truth. Wait long enough, and the uncomfortable person will give you exactly what you want. If silence makes you speak, you do not control the conversation. The silence does. One or more of these just described you. That recognition is not comfortable. It is not meant to be. It is, however, the first accurate map you have ever had of the signal you are broadcasting. This is not a modern phenomenon. It is not a product of toxic culture or contemporary dysfunction. What you are dealing with is ancient, consistent, and structurally embedded in every human hierarchy that has ever existed. In 1513, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince, not as moral prescription, but as clinical observation of how power actually operates when stripped of idealism. His central thesis? The world responds to perceived strength with a consistency that renders good intentions strategically irrelevant. His exact words: men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch, because everyone can see, but few can test by feeling. The surface signal is the operating reality. 5 centuries later, behavioral science has anatomized exactly why he was correct. Stanley Milgram's landmark obedience studies at Yale in the 1960s demonstrated something far darker than their surface conclusion. Yes, ordinary people administered what they believed were lethal electric shocks when instructed by an authority figure. But the deeper finding was this: authority did not require legitimacy. It required the appearance of legitimacy. The signal of dominance, a lab coat, a commanding tone, behavioral certainty, was sufficient to override the moral agency of intelligent adults. The predator does not need to be powerful. They need to appear more certain than you. The moment your signal architecture communicates hesitation, you have provided the contrast they need. Robert Cialdini's foundational research on influence and compliance identified 6 psychological triggers that override rational decision-making, and nearly every one of them lands harder against individuals broadcasting submission signals. Over-explainers are hit with authority pressure. Silence-intolerant individuals are exploited through strategic withdrawal. Gaze-submissive people are dominated through sustained eye contact and physical proximity. The compliance mechanism is not random. It is targeted to your specific vulnerability signal. Primatologist Frans de Waal's decades of research on chimpanzee and bonobo dominance hierarchies revealed a pattern that maps directly onto human social behavior. Dominance hierarchies are not maintained through constant violence. They are maintained through the continuous broadcasting and reading of submission signals. The dominant individual rarely needs to act. The subordinate individual continuously signals their own position through gaze, posture, proximity behavior, and vocalization patterns. Human social environments operate identically. The predator does not create the hierarchy. They simply read the signals you are already transmitting and occupy the position your behavior assigns them. This extends beyond individual predators. Institutions, legal systems, corporate structures, bureaucracies are themselves predatory scanning mechanisms. The person who over-explains to HR, who fidgets in a negotiation, who rushes to fill silence in a salary discussion, is not treated more fairly for their transparency. They are processed more efficiently. The system does not hate you. It simply responds to your signal with the treatment your signal requests. Everything up to this point has been diagnosis. This chapter is surgery, not improvement, not growth. The systematic eradication of the behavioral outputs that have been marking you as viable prey, replaced with cold, deliberate, trained signal architecture that transmits a categorically different message to every scanning system you enter. Reprogramming, gaze submission. The correction is not aggressive staring. Aggression is itself a submission signal. It communicates that you can be destabilized. The protocol is regulated, neutral, Sustained eye contact. You hold the gaze. You do not perform comfort or discomfort. You simply remain. The training method in every low-stakes social interaction, cashiers, colleagues, casual conversations. Practice holding eye contact 3 full seconds beyond your current comfort threshold before naturally breaking. You are recalibrating your nervous system's threat response threshold so that sustained eye contact no longer triggers your gaze aversion reflex under pressure. Within weeks of consistent practice, your baseline shifts. Neutrality in a dominant scanning environment reads as unreadable. Unreadable reads as dangerous, reprogramming boundary over explanation. The protocol is structural, not psychological. You are not waiting to feel confident before you speak. You are changing the grammatical architecture of how you decline, refuse, and assert. The rule: 1 sentence maximum, no justification unless strategically chosen. That doesn't work for me. Full stop. I won't be doing that. Full stop. No. Full stop. Every word beyond the boundary statement is a negotiation invitation. Every justification is a vulnerability disclosure. Precision in the language of dominance signaling reads as structural confidence, the behavioral signature of someone who does not require external validation to hold a position. Reprogramming, displacement, fidgeting. This requires nervous system regulation work, not willpower. Willpower suppression of fidgeting simply redirects the energy. You stop tapping and start over-explaining instead. The signal finds an outlet. The correct protocol is deliberate stillness training. In low-pressure environments, practice occupying physical space without movement. Sit without adjusting. Stand without shifting weight. Place your hands in a neutral position and leave them there. Under actual social pressure, the trained response is a single, deliberate, slow movement, followed by complete stillness. This signals not the absence of awareness, but the presence of regulation. Regulated individuals are assessed as costly targets. Reprogramming. Silence intolerance. This is the highest leverage reprogramming available to you. The protocol: weaponize the pause before you speak. Not hesitation. Hesitation is a praise signal. It communicates that you are searching for the safe answer. A deliberate pause is categorically different. It communicates that you are evaluating whether the question deserves an answer at all. 3 seconds of intentional silence before responding to any pressure, any challenge, any demand. In negotiations, after stating your position, stop completely. The first person to speak after a stated position has entered a concession posture. Do not be that person. None of these protocols are complex. All of them are uncomfortable, specifically because they require you to override ancient, deeply wired appeasement responses in real time. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the sensation of your nervous system being restructured. The outcome of consistent signal reprogramming is unambiguous. You become progressively more expensive to target. When your signal architecture stops offering easy entry points, the scanning system moves on. You do not need to become dominant. You need to become unreadable. Unreadable is enough. This is the chapter most people skip. Not because it is the most complex, because it is the most threatening. Everything in the previous chapter will fail within weeks if you attempt to install new behaviors onto the existing identity structure. You cannot upgrade the software while preserving the operating system that generated the problem. The architecture underneath must be replaced, not renovated. The uncomfortable truth: you are not trying to become a stronger version of who you currently are. Who you currently are is the liability. Psychological research on behavioral change, including foundational work by identity theorist Dolph Zillman and later synthesized by habit formation science, confirms a consistent structural finding. Behavior that conflicts with self-concept is unsustainable. You can force compliance with new behaviors for days, sometimes weeks. But if your core identity narrative still defines you as someone who needs approval, avoids conflict, and requires external validation to hold a position, your neurology will route you back to the behaviors that confirm that narrative. The system is functioning correctly. The system itself is what must be replaced. Machiavelli understood that the prince was not born. He was constructed. The prince is not a character study. It is a manufacturing blueprint. 3 identity dependencies must be surgically removed. The approval dependency, the need for others to validate your decisions before you commit to them. This is the root architecture of boundary over-explanation, gaze submission, and silence intolerance simultaneously. It is not a personality trait. It is a trained response to an environment that punished autonomous decision-making. Identifying its origin does not heal it. Behavioral override heals it. Every time you act without seeking validation, you weaken the neural pathway that demands it. The conflict avoidance dependency, the classification of confrontation as inherently dangerous. This is the fawn response institutionalized into identity. The reprogramming is deliberate, graduated exposure, not to aggression, but to the tolerance of another person's displeasure without behavioral collapse. Someone is unhappy with your decision. You remain still. You do not explain. You do not apologize. You let their discomfort exist without absorbing it. This is the core practice of identity replacement. The legibility dependency, the compulsion to be understood, to ensure others have the correct perception of your intentions. This drives over-explanation at its deepest level. The sovereign identity does not require accurate perception from others. It operates from its own assessment. Machiavelli was explicit. The effective prince does not concern himself with being understood. He concerns himself with outcomes. Legibility is a vulnerability. Strategic opacity is armor. The protocol for identity replacement is written, not internal. Write, in specific behavioral language, a precise description of the identity you are retiring. Not emotionally, clinically. Name the exact behaviors. Write what that identity costs you in outcomes, not feelings. Then write the replacement architecturally. Define the new identity through its behavioral outputs exclusively. How it holds eye contact, how it occupies silence, how it states positions, how it responds or does not respond to pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not comfort literature. It is an identity engineering instruction. The sovereign self is defined entirely by internal architecture, by the consistency of its behavioral outputs, regardless of external pressure or social consequence. The old identity needed the environment to cooperate. The new identity requires nothing from the environment. It simply executes. The person who began this video cannot use what this video contains. That person needs to be left here. What replaces them is a decision. Make it deliberately, or the predators around you will make it for you. There is no conclusion here designed to make you feel good about what you just learned. If you are looking for that, for the reassuring summary, the motivational landing, the reminder that change is within reach, you're still operating from the identity this video just told you to bury. That need for comfort at the end is itself a praise signal. Notice it, then override it. Society does not protect the weak. It has never protected the weak. Every institutional structure, every social hierarchy, every relational dynamic you have ever participated in has operated on a single, consistent, unspoken principle: resources, respect, and safety flow toward those who signal they can defend them. Thucydides identified this in 400 BC in the Melian Dialogue. The Athenian general's address to the people of Melos remains the most honest political statement ever recorded. The strong do what they can. The weak suffer what they must. This was not a threat. It was an observation of operational reality. 2,500 years of human civilization have not revised that equation. The mechanisms are now psychological rather than military. But the underlying selection logic is identical. If you present as prey, you will be consumed. The method changes. The outcome does not. Understand what continuation of your current signal architecture actually costs. Not emotionally, but structurally. Every negotiation you enter while broadcasting submission signals is a negotiation you have already partially lost before a word is spoken. Every relationship dynamic established while you are over-explaining and gaze-submitting is a power structure that will take years of sustained behavioral change to restructure. Every professional environment that catalogs you as low dominance in the first weeks of contact will process you through a framework that is extraordinarily difficult to escape. Research by psychologist Nalini Ambady on thin-slice judgments, the brain's ability to form stable assessments of individuals from exposures as short as 2 seconds, confirms that dominance classification happens faster than conscious processing. You are being filed before you are being heard. The cost of waiting, of deciding to begin this reprogramming later, when you feel ready, is that every day of delay is another day of active signal transmission. You are not neutral while you wait. You are broadcasting. There is a small percentage of individuals in any environment who understand what you now understand, and who have done the behavioral work to restructure their signal architecture accordingly. They are not necessarily the loudest. They are frequently the most still, the most economical with language, the most comfortable with silence and with the discomfort of others. They are not liked universally. Universal approval is a prey state goal. They are respected universally, including by the predators who would have consumed an earlier version of them. Because the predatory scanning system, when it encounters a signal architecture that offers no easy entry point, recalibrates. It registers. This one is costly. Move on. That threshold is not a personality type. It is not a gift. It is a trained behavioral output. It is available to anyone willing to perform the identity surgery this video has outlined. Most people will not do it, not because they lack the intelligence, but because the surgery requires them to permanently retire the identity that has been seeking approval, avoiding conflict, and broadcasting submission since childhood. And that identity, however dysfunctional, is familiar. Familiar is comfortable. Comfortable is the enemy of sovereign. Do not return to this video for motivation. Motivation is a prey state resource. It depletes. It requires replenishment. It makes your behavioral change dependent on an emotional state you cannot control. Instead, return to Chapter 5. Select one protocol. Execute it today in the next interaction you have with another human being. Not perfectly, not confidently, deliberately. Deliberate repetition restructures neurology. Neurology determines signal output. Signal output determines how the world processes you. The world has already been reading you for years. Starting now, you decide what it reads.